it, at this point in the process, the nerves are really starting to set in, right? You're
Yeah.
looking at it, you're a week away, 2 weeks at most from taking the exam, probably somewhere in between those two. What kind of advice are you giving to test takers who are a little nervous at this point, who are kind of like, all right, I'm at the end here. I feel like I haven't done enough. What do I do? Like, I'm starting to freak out. I'm starting to panic. What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Joe Nissim, and with me, as always, is Mr. Raman Singh. Raman.
I look like Aladdin today.
You can show me the world.
All I need is my magic carpet, man. Let's go. Oh, and the hair, of course. But I'm sure there was a bald Aladdin in some point, you know.
Well, Aladdin in his 40s, you know?
Aladdin in his
If
40s.
he's a Middle Eastern dude as advertised, that dude is bald at about
Yeah, it's
30,
gotta be like what?
32,
I was
33.
gonna 3 out of 4 people.
That's it, dude. He's just start shaving it and smoking hookah, Aladdin.
Oh man, that's funny.
I'm
Well, Joe, what are we talking about today, man?
that's a good animated series, Aladdin, the later years.
Aladdin with midlife crisis.
Well, here we are. CFP is spitting distance away.
Right there, right there, right
And
there.
we're right at the end line here. And as a closing out this exam cycle, I always love doing this episode because it, at this point in the process, the nerves are really starting to set in, right? You're
Yeah.
looking at it, you're a week away, 2 weeks at most from taking the exam, probably somewhere in between those two. What kind of advice are you giving to test takers who are a little nervous at this point, who are kind of like, all right, I'm at the end here. I feel like I haven't done enough. What do I do? Like, I'm starting to freak out. I'm starting to panic. I kind of want to just not even take this thing, or I just don't know. Like, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Before I answer that, I spend time on the CFP subreddit,
Hmm.
and I'm seeing a lot of posts being made, and they're like discouraged. Like they'll end up taking the Dalton exam readiness test, and then they'll get their ass handed to them, and they're like, "Oh my God, like what am I doing?" Like some people are going to like Danko's live review, and they're like, "I feel like I know nothing," and the exam is like right around the corner. When I talk to students and when they're feeling discouraged, and I've had students cry in my sessions, Joe. I don't know if you've had like that experience with our one-on-ones, but like I mean, students are just like crying. They're like, "I'm just doing so much." And I tell them like, "Listen, the first thing you need to do is you need to take a breath, take a deep
Hmm.
breath. It's okay. Like you are putting in the effort. I know it may not seem a lot. It may not seem like you're not doing a lot, or in some cases, it seems like you're doing a lot, which is, you have to trust the process, right? If you trust the process, it's going to keep you aligned to what you're trying to accomplish. That is the main foundation. Everything else is just fluff. If you
Hmm.
trust the process, it's going to be okay. But what would you say to that?
I think this is the point where you don't start changing everything, because I think
Yeah,
freaking out is easy to do.
right,
And I think it's the most natural thing to feel. Like, you should be nervous right now. Like, it
right.
is a part of the process. I think one of the things that, as life gets easier and we have AI and all these wonderful tools, you got to remember something. 20, 25 years ago, people weren't taking on as much in their daily life. And I think this is kind of part of daily life, is that everybody's doing so much. They're trying to do everything, right? Especially, when 20, 25 years ago, if you were going to see a friend, you would have to call that friend and get directions. And there was always a chance that you were going to get lost, and, dinner would be sitting there. And so there's a little bit of a slower part to life. But now a lot of those things are just alleviated. And
Hmm.
it's a double edged sword, right?
Hmm.
Because we all want to work. We all want to be parents. We all want to stay fit. We all have, again, 20, 25 years ago, the way that people lost weight, there's like an ad from the 60s of like smoke Virginia Slims to keep the weight off, and it's like, so people had a much more simple life 25, 30 years ago. We all are living a very fast life.
Yeah.
And I think when you go and take an exam like this, it really shines a light on how much you're trying to take on. So in these last couple of weeks, clear your plate,
Yeah.
right? Ask for help, ask for support, don't hesitate in doing that. If you need to ask your significant other to take on tasks that they normally wouldn't take on, it's for the last couple of weeks. It'll allow you to focus because if you're trying to do everything, you're going to end up doing nothing.
Right.
And so, like you said, taking a breath, assessing where you are, and trusting the process. And right now, your only job is to keep going
Yeah.
because stopping right now, it might feel good for a minute, it might feel good for two. Eventually, the guilt will set in if you're not putting in the effort. But that doesn't mean you're studying 8 hours a day. So
Right.
find that midline effort where you're not doing too little and you're not doing too much and you're staying right there in the middle. I'm continuing my 3 or 4 hours a day. Maybe I do a little bit extra on the weekend because there is extra time, but I'm sleeping. I'm eating
Yeah.
well. I am still doing some version of exercise, even if that exercise is going out for a walk for 30 minutes at the beginning of my studying, in the middle of my studying as my break.
Yeah.
Do those things to kind of keep your head in the game because it's easy to quit right now.
And
But
easy to stress out.
and it's easy to stress out. But the better thing to do is ask for help
Yeah.
and keep going because I don't know if you felt this way, but I did not feel good about the exam until like 2 days out. Like
Yeah.
it started all really to come together in the week, maybe the week and a half leading into the exam, where I started to feel like, oh, okay, I can pass this thing. I can do it. But those weeks leading in, it felt like I was plateauing. It didn't feel like I was making as much progress as I wanted to. And that's kind of the nature of progress. It's never as fast as you want it to be.
Yeah.
But I just stuck with it. That was the only thing that I did differently than anybody else in my office who was taking the exam at the same time.
Right. That's like you said, you stuck with it, right? You stuck with the process and you didn't decide to change something and you kept a well-balanced life throughout, right? When I look at the March cycle, I had couple of students that I would engage with. And you know what they would tell me, like, hey, Raman, I went to the gym, I had a good dinner, I studied, I did this with my studying. They had a very well-balanced life going on. At least, I mean, we're talking about 3 weeks before the exam, 2 weeks before the exam. Yes, they were stressed out, right? But they were managing that stress well, but most importantly, trusting that process.
Yep.
And that's what I tell students. I tell them, like, listen, don't not be stressed out. You need to have a little bit of stress because it's going to keep you on your toes. But
Mm,
if all you're doing is stressing out about the exam, it might lead you into failure because you
mm.
might start overlooking things or you might run into fatigue. And the last thing you want to do is gas out, when you're about a week away from the exam, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Or it just starts to feel so overwhelming you don't end up doing anything,
Right.
and sometimes it just causes you to freeze because you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, there's so much to do." And you freeze, right? It's like when you're looking at your to-do list and the best thing to do is one thing at a time and just
Yeah.
and you got to stay patient and it's hard when you're looking at 12, 15, 20 things on your list that you want to do, but okay, you don't get to all 15. But if you get to 12, that's pretty
Sure.
good,
Yeah.
right? 12 out of 15 is better than 0 out of 15. It's better
Right.
than 3 out of 15. It's better than waiting until the last minute. And that's the one thing that I will encourage you. And I will tell you, this is not the most revolutionary advice, is you just got to keep going.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, something simple is very effective, right? I mean, I remember when I was studying for the CFP, um, I just stuck to a process. And Joe, I mean, I kid you not, man. I remember like, vividly where, I was waking up every day studying, going to work, studying, and coming back home, going to the gym, studying, taking care of my dog. Like I had a full-on life going on. And to your point, you know, a week before the exam, I didn't think about like, oh, the CFP exam is a week away. I'm stressed out. I'm like, you know what? I just have to keep applying the process that I have. And I still clearly remember. I remember as day of flight, I drove my car to Sarasota, downtown Sarasota, parked my car, and I got out of the car and I was like, you know what? I'm ready for this.
Mm,
I just felt so confident with taking the test. I'm not gonna say I felt confident on passing the test. I felt so confident take going into the test that you know what? I have been doing the reps. I followed the process. I didn't deviate. I didn't change anything like, oh, let me try something new 3 weeks before the test or 2 weeks before the exam. I just kept on trusting my process. I'm like, you know what? Do I know my material? Yes. And I would like, actually like ask myself, like, okay, do I know my material? Well, yes, I do. Am I doing well on practice questions majority of the time? Yes. Am I reading questions RTFQ? Yes, I am. Those things allowed me to validate. It was like check, 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 check. And if I'm having all these green lights, then theoretically, then I should have a green light on the exam,
mm.
right? And that's exactly what happened.
Yep. And this is the time to, and I think that you said that beautifully, like it is time to reduce, not add.
Right.
So do the basic things right. Read your questions, do your flashcards, and apply it as best as you can. Because remember, the exam doesn't ask you to be perfect. The passing scores are not a 90% or an 80%. What from what we can gather from what CFP board has told us, we're looking somewhere around the 70 is kind of the common consensus on the exam. So remember, that's almost a third of the exam that you can get wrong and still pass. So focus on the things that you know well and make those things as best as you can
Yep.
and simplify, right?
Yep.
The one thing that everybody can do is show up. The one thing that everybody can do is read the question. The one thing that you can always do is answer the question that is in front of you. And that means you have to get roughly, again, 7 out of every 10 questions correct. I mean, if we were just guessing and put B on every single answer, you're probably going to get 3 or 4 right,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. You're
So out of
30%,
every 10.
40% there.
Right. So, this is not necessarily rocket science, but and the thing is that when an exam like this feels so big and so daunting, it's easy to get away from the simple answers because it doesn't feel like this is a complicated problem, so it needs a complicated answer. It is
Right.
a complicated problem, but being simple doesn't mean that it's easy. It just means that it's simple.
Yep. And another thing I'd like to add on to that is don't fight the test. Don't sit there and start arguing with answer choices because you don't agree with it. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. We literally had that conversation with the student, not too long ago. But if don't sit there and be like, well, I don't agree with this for whatever reason. You have been given enough information to answer the question. Don't fight it. Don't keep your opinions to yourself. After you pass the CFP, after you get your credentials, then you could share your opinions about the CFP exam and what you don't like about it or like about it to the CFP board if you want to, right?
Mm,
But for now, don't fight the questions. Just know that I have enough information to answer the question. I just got to find the answer.
mm. I couldn't agree more, and that's a great piece of advice is don't fight the test. Even if you don't like the question, it's not your job to like it or not like it. Your job is to answer the question.
Right.
After the exam, you can bitch and moan all you want about the exam, but right now remember there's a task at hand.
Yeah.
And the task at hand is for you to answer the question. You can read the question, answer the question, and if you don't know it, you pick B and move on.
Yeah.
Like if you're really
Exactly.
stuck, you
When
pick
in
B and
doubt,
move on.
be it out, right?
Mm.
And one of the
So
students said, "B for better."
B
B
for
for
better. That's right.
better.
B is for better. So,
Better.
that is, again, don't overcomplicate the process and try to worry about every little thing. This is now the time to reduce, keep going, because those good study habits are going to be the ones that carry you across. And again, rehearse like you're going to take the exam. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, good luck, everybody. Trust your process.
Hmm.
Just keep going this last week or two. Read the question, answer the question, and hopefully we will see you on the other side of this exam. Good luck, and we will see you guys back here in a couple of weeks where we will start the November cycle.
Yep.
All right, take it easy, everybody.